In 2019, me and my now husband were enjoying a cold beer in our rented flat one night. We were daydreaming of the future and scrolling through Rightmove, looking at properties out of our price range, wondering what it would be like to live in and own one of these homes. This is something we often did, sending each other properties that both of us knew we wouldn't be able to afford. I would often make the comment of "That's it, that's the one," and my husband would respond with "Yes, I'll take 2 for that price." Well, this night was like no other. We scoured the web for properties all across the UK, with no intention of actually perusing this dream due to our current financial circumstances. "You are going to love this one," my husband said. "It is right up your street, cozy cottage, rural, log burner. Say no more. Send it me," I said. The moment I heard the words cozy cottage, I was already in love. Ping, he sent across the link and I excitedly started scrolling through the listing. "OMG, that's the one," I said, but this time it was different. This time it really was the one. My heart started racing as I read deeper into the property specifics. It was everything I had ever dreamed of, and my husband knew it too. Just one slight problem: the price. No way would we be able to afford this house, and even if we could save the money, the property would definitely sell before that. "We have to go see it, Leo." "We can't, darling, we can't afford to buy right now, and besides it's 2 hours away from here. Would you even want to move that far?" "Of course I would. For that house I would move to the other side of the country. It's perfect." I was hooked, and knew that I needed to at least view this property. A feeling I had never had before. We hadn't ever considered actually viewing any of the previous properties that we had fallen in love with before. "Sorry, love, one day we will have our dream home," Leo said, but I knew that I had to have that house. The next morning I got up for work and noticed my husband was already in his home office. "Early start?" I asked as I walked into his office. I noticed the house listing open on his computer screen. "I can't stop thinking about that house," he said. "I'm going to call the estate agents today and maybe book a viewing. Don't get your hopes up though, I just don't see how we can afford it, but there's no harm in looking right." I was like a kid in a toy shop. I was so excited to actually view a property, and the fact that it was my dream home, my hopes couldn't be any higher. Leo spoke with the estate agents and booked a viewing for the following Saturday. 5 days I had to wait to view the house. Every day I was certain we would get a call saying the house had been sold or that they were taking no more viewings, but Saturday came around and it was finally time to make the 2-hour journey. The car ride felt like a lifetime. We spoke about our future, the house, and finances. We both knew we wouldn't be able to afford to do this, but we jumped in with rose-tinted glasses anyway. "There it is." I pointed at the for sale sign propped up outside the cottage. It looked exactly like the photos. We were greeted at the door by the current owners and they quickly showed us in. There's not many times in life where I find myself speechless, but this is one of those times. The cottage was surreal and the location was perfect. I looked at my husband and his face said it all. He too was in love. The homeowners seemed very nice. They explained they were in a hurry to sell and were sad to be leaving after only spending 1 year in the property. 1 year. I thought to myself, I would spend the rest of my life here. But little did I know what was to come. Back in the car, me and my husband were silent. We both knew it wouldn't be possible, told ourselves not to get our hopes up before coming here, but now that we had seen the house we both knew that it really was the one. That night we sat and went through all of our expenses, cancelling all of our unnecessary subscriptions, desperately trying to find an inch of possibility to scrape together the deposit needed, but no matter how hard we tried we would fall at least £10,000 short of what we needed. Disheartened and exhausted, we both agreed it wasn't possible and we would just have to forget we had ever seen the house. We emailed the estate agents, thanked them for their time and asked them to keep us in the loop on the sale of the cottage. The following day was as normal as our Sundays were. We met family, went shopping, and continued as if nothing had happened. That was of course until Leo had an unexpected business call to take. Really? You're going to answer that? It's a Sunday. Can't it wait until you're back in work? I asked. I won't be long, I'm not sure who it is, but it could be urgent. He took himself off to answer the call. Roughly 5 minutes later he walked back in the room, only it had looked like he had seen a ghost. What's wrong? I shouted, hurrying over to him. You're never going to believe it. Someone has just offered me a job on the side, cash in hand sort of thing. That's great. Do you think you can do it? You're quite busy as it is. I asked the question, but I knew he would say yes, he is a workaholic. You don't understand, Chloe, this isn't a small job, they've offered me £10,000 to do this for them. Are you serious? I couldn't believe what I was hearing, it was like someone above had sent an angel. All I could think about was the house. I accepted it straight away. I need to start working on it tonight, they need it desperately. That's fantastic, love, £10,000, that's exactly enough for the house deposit. He finished my sentence off. We were both slightly weirded out by the coincidence, but have always lived by the motto, if it's meant to be it will be. The following morning we rang the estate agents first thing and placed our offer on the house. By the afternoon we had been accepted and had already received all of the legal documents to fill in. We were over the moon, and for the next 4 months we worked relentlessly to save any extra pennies, both putting in overtime and my husband working side jobs on an evening and weekends to make sure we had the best start in our new home. Move-in day came around and the whole process was so smooth sailing. It really was meant to be, I thought. It took us some time to adjust to our new home, getting our bearings in a new town, coming to terms that we were homeowners and making sure every last ornament was placed perfectly. We both often joked that the house felt like it was drawing us in, almost like it had a personality. Maybe this was because the property was nearly 200 years old and had a lot of character. But after a while I did start to get a slight uneasy feeling. All of the coincidences and the fact that we were actually in the property did make me start to question, how was this actually possible? Now, before I continue deeper into this story, I want to pause here to tell you that my husband is the biggest skeptic I have ever met. We couldn't be more opposite when it comes to the paranormal and supernatural. In some ways this is a good thing because he would rationalize some of the things I experienced, putting my mind at ease. On the other hand, I would often find it very frustrating when he wouldn't believe the things I was explaining to him. Back to the story, we had now been living in the cottage for a few months, for the most part we had settled in nicely. There was just a few things that hard started out of the ordinary. Items would randomly disappear and reappear in a completely different place. Keys placed on the side in the kitchen would go missing for days and show up in the bedside cabinet. TV remotes would randomly appear on the kitchen side after we both had sworn he hadn't moved them. I was starting to get very weirded out by these experiences, but my husband would simply put it down to us being tired. As frustrating as it was, he was probably right, I thought. We were both working hard during the day and decorating at night. We were probably just misplacing the items ourselves, right? It was a Friday night. We had both been up late watching a movie and I had drank one too many cups of tea. We went to bed and as expected I was up in the night needing to use the loo. The route to the bathroom from the master bedroom was as follows: come out of the door, to the right was the staircase, turn left, the bathroom was immediately in front of you, and to the left again was a long dark hallway that led to the spare bedroom. The spare bedroom door was always left shut due to an open fireplace in there that caused a draft down the hall. As I approached the bathroom door, something told me to look down the hallway towards the spare bedroom. To my surprise, the door to the spare bedroom was open, and to my horror I could make out a dark figure lurking in the corner. I froze in fear, petrified and unable to move. All I could do was watch on as right before my eyes the house transformed back in time to the 1800s. There was now an iron cot in the corner of the room where we had placed a wardrobe, and the fire was burning even though it was now out of use. I was so confused but still unable to move due to the pure adrenaline rushing through my body. I watched as the figure emerged out of the corner of the room and walked towards the cot. It was a woman, dressed in a white Victorian-styled dress. She was crying hysterically, leaning over the cot and looking down and what I could only make out to be a deceased child. My heart racing, I managed to take a step closer to the bathroom door. The floorboards underneath me creaked, and in that moment I felt these eyes burning into the side of my head. She saw me. I screamed and ran back into my bedroom and slammed the door shut. What? What is it? My husband jumped out of bed. I saw a woman, in the spare room. But it wasn't the spare room. It was different. It was like it was in a different time zone, and You what? He asked, still half asleep. Before I could even answer again, he was walking out of the bedroom door. Wait! I shouted as I ran after him. We both walked out into the hallway. The door to the spare room was shut. There's nothing there. He opened the door and looked around. The room was back to normal. You were probably sleepwalking or something. It's 3 a.m. Chloe, let's go back to sleep. I know what I saw, I said, hurrying back into bed. That night I didn't sleep a wink. I kept thinking about the lady that I saw. Who was she? Why was she crying, and what happened to the baby? Questions I knew I'd probably never get the answers to. The next day we both went about our day. Whenever I tried to mention the whole ordeal to my husband, he would just put it down to me being tired. Frustrated, I knew this time that this wasn't the case. I knew what I had seen and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. A whole year had passed since that night. It was now 2020. COVID was on the rise and lockdowns were on the way. The past year had been pretty uneventful in the house. the odd items were still being misplaced, and sometimes I would see things out of the corner of my eye, but nothing that couldn't be explained. Things like a breeze moving a curtain or a shadow from car lights shining through the window. One thing is for sure, I hadn't seen that lady again. We were now both working from home, spending 24/7 in the cottage due to COVID. We were both starting to get cabin fever when restrictions finally started to be lifted for the first time. The first thing we did was book a week away in North Wales. Wales had our heart, the open endless countryside, the beaches, and quaint cottages. We would always visit once or twice a year and always joked that one day we would live there. On our visit this time though, we walked past an estate agent's in a small village and saw an advertisement for a small cottage, and for the first time it was actually in our price range. "Look at this, love," I pointed through the window at the advertisement. "Yes, it's lovely, but my gosh, that needs some work." He wasn't wrong. It was on the brink of being derelict. No heating, holes in the windows. It was definitely a fixer-upper. "Fancy a project?" I joked. Before we could continue the conversations, there was an emergency news broadcast flashing up on our phones. The country was to go back into lockdown in the next 24 hours. We had to rush back to the holiday let and pack up our belongings to head back home. Back home our spirits were low. We were always sad when we had to leave Wales, but this was different. We were both mourning the country and wanted nothing more but to return. A few weeks had passed, and out of curiosity we began searching Rightmove for houses in North Wales. The derelict cottage was no longer for sale, but that was no surprise to me. It was priced perfectly for a builder or DIYer to snap it up. We talked at length and decided to put our house up for sale. Maybe it was the lockdowns, maybe it was something else, but our perfect cottage was not so perfect anymore. The inviting feeling we had once felt had disappeared and the house felt cold. We spoke to a few estate agents and promptly decided who we would list the house with. Within a few days there was now a for sale sign standing outside our home. Now, like I said, the energy had shifted. The house was different, but nothing could have prepared me for what was about to happen. The second that for sale sign went up, it was like we had awoken something evil in the house. That same night we listed the house. Me and Leo had been celebrating with a cold beer. "Cheers to whatever the future brings," we said. We had a late one and headed off to bed. I remember feeling uneasy, almost as if I was being watched that night, but put it down to maybe having one too many. Tossing and turning, I struggled to sleep. My husband, on the other hand, was flat out and snoring next to me. I was just about to nod off when something inside me told me to open my eyes. There she was. The woman I had seen over a year ago in the spare room was now standing over our bed. The unmistakable outline of her Victorian dress and her mousy blonde hair in an outdated updo. She was staring at my husband sleeping. I closed my eyes shut, thinking that when I reopened them she would disappear. I slowly opened my eyes, but she was still there, only now she had her hand out, slowly approaching my husband, heading straight for his throat. I screamed and watched as she contorted her head towards me, grinning as she was still leaning towards my husband, hands stretched out ready to strangle him. I dived under the covers once again, jolting my husband awake. "Are you okay?" he shouted. I was sobbing, inconsolable, unable to find any words to explain to him what had just happened. "Chloe, what's wrong?" You're starting to worry me now. He sat up, giving me a cuddle and calmed me down before I could talk. I saw her. Saw who? He asked, understandably confused. The woman. The same woman I saw in the spare room last year, but this time she was trying to kill you. Usually he would have some witty excuse as to what I had seen, but this time he could tell I was dead serious. I was a wreck. He had never seen me like this before, and somewhere in the back of his mind he could tell that what I was saying was true. I didn't sleep much for the next week, and Leo could see how the house was draining my energy. We pushed on to find a new property as quickly as possible, and accepted every house viewing for our cottage. It only took 1 week for us to find a buyer for our house. They put an offer in just above our asking price and we were ecstatic, accepting their offer right away. As usual that night we toasted to selling our house. We were stood in the kitchen on FaceTime to family, sharing the good news. I just need the loo, I said, running upstairs. Leo was still in the kitchen on FaceTime to him mother. I was washing up in the bathroom when I had the uneasy feeling come over me. Once again I felt watched. I felt as though someone or something was standing outside of the bathroom door waiting for me to come out. Shaking off the fear, I slowly opened the bathroom door. Standing in the doorway of our master bedroom was the woman. She was partially blocking my only exit to the top of the staircase. I once again froze as she turned to look at me. Her face twisted and her eyes turned black. She began to hysterical scream in my face, and dark tears ran down her angry expression on her face. She started to move closer to me. I ran like hell for the stairs, closing my eyes and screaming myself as I ran past her down the stairs and into the kitchen. She's here. She's at the top of the stairs, I cried as I ran to Leo, his mum still on the other end of the phone. It's okay, you're safe now. Leo once again tried to comfort me, but as before I was too distraught. We slept in the living room that night and went together on toilet shifts. Whatever or whoever she was, I could tell that she was angry at us. Maybe it was because we were selling the house, I don't know, but something in that house had changed. Over the next few months we were dealing with solicitors and estate agents on a weekly basis. Nothing about this house sale was smooth sailing, and we still couldn't find a house to move to ourselves. Our spirits started to dampen when we lost our first buyer and had to relist the house for sale. We had decided that if we don't sell again in a fortnight and if we haven't found a house ourselves, then we would have to take the house off the market. One evening we were scrolling through the internet for houses as always, and I spotted the house that had started all of this. The derelict cottage in North Wales had been relisted, but this time for even cheaper than before. I showed my husband and we agreed to book a viewing. The following weekend we drove the 3.5 hours out to Wales to see the property. We had never been to this area before, knew nothing about it. For all we know it could be cheap because of the area. Nevertheless we still went. Upon arrival we noticed just how rural this house was. There were no neighbors, no main roads, no street lights. Just this tiny cottage standing amongst fields and fields of farmland. Area can't be that bad if there's no one here, Leo joked. What a view though, I pointed towards the end of the garden. That view was like something out of a painting. It was in that moment I knew that it didn't matter what the house looked like on the inside, that view was worth millions to me. We looked around the property and quickly realized it needed a lot more work than we were capable of. But for some crazy reason we both loved the house. We thanked the estate agent for showing us around and asked if there had been much interest. "Yes, we have 5 more viewings today and lots more over the weekend," they replied. We hurried into the car and knew if we wanted it we would have to move fast. "I don't know what it is about that house, but I feel safe in there," I said to Leo as I was buckling my seatbelt up. "Yes, I know what you mean. What do you think about all the work it needs though?" he asked. "It's a lot of work, but that view is amazing. It will definitely be worth it just for that." We drove 1 mile up the road, pulled over and rang the estate agents immediately. Unbeknownst to me, my husband decided to put in a lowball offer, explaining to the estate agents that the property needs a lot of TLC and it wouldn't be possible at the price listed. I thought he was crazy, as the sellers had already listed the property for £40,000 less than they had done the first time around. We waited eagerly for a call back from the estate agent, worried that the sellers would be offended by our offer and wouldn't want to negotiate with us. To my surprise, they accepted the offer. Not only did they accept our offer, they cancelled all of the viewings that were booked to take place for that afternoon too. We raced home so excitedly, but also a little shocked at what we had just done. We were not DIY professionals and this was a big move, even further away from friends and families. Upon arriving home, we received a phone call from our estate agents. We received an offer on our house, once again above asking price. This time it was a first-time buyer who wanted to move quickly, and as the house we had just purchased was empty, the chain was short. We accepted straight away and began to prepare for the paperwork. A few months passed and we were starting to pack the house up one evening when the doorbell rang. It was my neighbor. We hadn't spoken too much before, but she had been clearing out her loft and came across an old journal. She explained that the journal was written by a lady who once lived in my house many years before and thought that I would like to read through it. I thanked her and took her up on her offer. That night after dinner I sat at the dining room table and began to flick through the journal. I turned a few pages before suddenly being stopped in my tracks. Right there in front of me was a portrait of the woman I had been seeing in our house. Underneath the painting it read Jane Smith. I continued over the page. June 16, 1856. Today I laid my sweet child to rest. I couldn't read any more. Leo, get in here. I shouted at him through the living room doors. My husband too couldn't believe his eyes. Everything I had told him about this woman was now written in this diary that had been handed to me by the neighbor. I spent the rest of the night delving deeper into her story to find out she married a nobleman and went on to be what some might say as famous in the Victorian era. Because of this, she was pretty easy to find on Google, and a few universities in the area had done some studies on her life. I spent hours researching this woman, and I came across something quite eerie. Minus the fame, me and her hadn't lived too much of a dissimilar life. We had the same family set up, both experienced hard times and had lived in similar areas. Obviously, we also lived in the same house. All of these though were just coincidences, I thought, until I saw a study paper online. It read that after living at our current house she too moved to North Wales with her husband. But not only did she move to North Wales, she moved to the exact same town that we were buying our new home in. I was officially creeped out. Was this woman following me, or was I following her? Or was I her in a past life and I'm now reliving this life in a different timeline? Were we related, or is this all a coincidence? A million questions flooded through my mind, and in a panic state I slammed the diary shut and promptly took it back to the neighbor, never wanting to look at it again. After this the house sale went very smoothly. I never saw the woman again, and we moved into the derelict cottage in North Wales. We were busy renovating the new house. We didn't know much about the history of the house and suspected it to be around 300 years old. I did some digging and found out that the house was used in the World Wars as a safe house to house children from Liverpool. And that is exactly what this house is, a safe house. We have now lived here for 3 years and felt nothing but safe. We have transformed this house into a home, and even though the no neighbors / middle of nowhere situation can seem a bit creepy at times, the second our doors are locked we feel so safe and protected by this home. That was, until about a fortnight ago, me and my husband went for a short walk to a cemetery down the road from here. Admiring the old headstones, we were reading out the names of the people who laid to rest there. And then we saw it. Jane Smith died 1868, followed by the name of our current house.